What happens when a halftime show stops being entertainment and starts looking like a political battlefield? The NFL thought it booked a global superstar. Instead, it may have triggered the biggest culture clash in modern sports. What began as whispers of a fan boycott has now exploded into a fully produced rival broadcast, complete with major country stars, national distribution, and political backing. And behind the scenes, billion-dollar business deals hanging in the balance. This isn't just about music anymore. It's about power, audience loyalty, and whether the NFL miscalculated the room. And February 8th might expose everything. From hashtag to counterattack. It started quietly. A few frustrated fans online. A handful of viral posts. Talk of tuning out during halftime. Nothing the NFL hasn't weathered before. But this time, the frustration didn't fade. It organized. Within days, what looked like scattered outrage turned into something structured. Turning Point USA stepped in and did what social media protests rarely accomplish. They built infrastructure. They announced the All-American Halftime Show, branding it not as a complaint, but as an alternative. That changed the dynamic completely, because now, this wasn't about asking fans to boycott. It was about giving them somewhere else to go. And that's a critical difference. Boycotts rely on silence. Alternatives rely on energy. Suddenly, the story wasn't "some fans are upset." The story became, there is now a competing halftime production scheduled to air at the exact same time as the Super Bowl halftime show. That's escalation. Instead of a protest, this became a parallel event, professionally branded, heavily promoted, positioned as a cultural counterweight to what organizers described as the NFL's direction. And then came the lineup announcement. That's when this stopped looking symbolic and started looking strategic. Because if this had been a random live stream with unknown performers, the NFL wouldn't blink. But the names attached weren't random. They were deliberate. Country artists with loyal, politically aware fan bases. Performers who have openly leaned into patriotism as part of their brand identity. Musicians who understand exactly who their audiences are. That's not accidental booking. That's targeting. And timing it directly opposite the official halftime show, that's confrontation. The NFL has dealt with criticism before. Anthem protests, political backlash, social controversies. But it rarely faces a coordinated entertainment rival in real time. This isn't someone yelling from the sidelines. This is someone building another stage. And the message is clear. If you don't like what the NFL is offering, here's something else. But the real turning point wasn't the announcement. It was who agreed to headline. Because when the headliner was revealed, this went from online frustration to cultural flashpoint. And that's where things really got complicated. The lineup that shifted the narrative. Kid Rock stepping into this wasn't subtle. It was loud, intentional, and unmistakably political in tone. For decades, Kid Rock has walked the line between rock and country, while leaning openly into nationalist imagery and pro-America branding. He understands how to speak directly to a specific segment of the American audience. And more importantly, that audience understands him. So when he agreed to headline the All-American Halftime Show, it wasn't just a musical booking. It was a statement. And he didn't hold back. His remarks contrasting his event with what he described as a dance party, featuring someone wearing a dress and singing in Spanish, immediately injected culture war language into the conversation. That quote circulated fast. Not just because of what it said, but because of what it implied. This wasn't about genre preference. This was about identity. Reports had suggested Bad Bunny might incorporate fashion elements like wearing a dress during the performance. In other contexts, that might barely register. But in this moment, within this narrative, it became symbolic ammunition. And Kid Rock knew exactly how that would land with his audience. But he didn't stand alone. Brantley Gilbert joined, a country rocker known for high-energy performances and a fiercely loyal fan base. Lee Brice signed on, another established country voice with mainstream recognition. Gabby Barrett added generational reach. Now the rival show had weight across age demographics. That's not random. That's coalition building. Each of these artists brings a slightly different audience segment. Together, they form a concentrated cultural bloc, patriotic country music fans who may already feel disconnected from the NFL's entertainment direction. And that's what makes this lineup powerful. It's not about talent comparison. Both sides have talent. It's about alignment. Bad Bunny represents global Latin pop dominance. He's one of the most streamed artists in the world. His appeal is international, younger, urban, cross-cultural. Kid Rock's coalition represents something different. Domestic, country-leaning, culturally conservative America. Two entertainment ecosystems. Two Americas, visually and sonically different, and both airing at the exact same time. That's not coincidence. That's confrontation dressed as competition. But here's where it gets even more volatile. Because this wasn't just about wardrobe or music style. Bad Bunny has been outspoken in the past about immigration issues, criticizing certain enforcement policies and expressing concern about deportations affecting fans. In isolation, that's an artist expressing political views. In the middle of a Super Bowl culture clash, it becomes a lightning rod. Suddenly, the halftime show isn't just entertainment. It's perceived as political messaging. Whether that's fair or exaggerated depends on perspective. But perception is what drives reaction. And reaction is what fuels ratings wars. But while fans debated online, something much more serious was reportedly unfolding inside NFL offices. Because this wasn't just about public opinion, it was about money. And that's where things really begin to tighten. Inside the building, the billion-dollar nerves. The loudest fights are happening online, but the quietest ones, they're happening in boardrooms. Because while fans argue about culture and commentators debate identity politics, NFL owners are reportedly focused on something far more concrete: revenue stability. According to reports circulating through major sports media outlets, several prominent owners were less than thrilled about the halftime selection. One anonymous owner allegedly told Commissioner Roger Goodell that the decision should have been thought through better. That's not ideological outrage. That's risk management language. And here's why that matters. The NFL isn't just an entertainment league, it's a media empire. Multi-billion-dollar broadcast agreements, long-term advertising partnerships, and complex ownership negotiations sit beneath every Sunday game. At the time of this controversy, the league was navigating sensitive media alignment discussions involving ESPN, conversations that require federal regulatory approval in certain structures. And in an election-year political climate, optics matter. Owners reportedly feared one specific scenario. If the halftime show turned overtly political, particularly in a way that clashed with a sitting or potential administration, it could complicate unrelated business negotiations. Now, to be clear, there is no confirmed evidence that any political retaliation would occur. But corporate executives don't gamble on probably fine. They calculate worst-case scenarios. And the worst-case scenario here? A halftime performance that becomes a viral political moment, followed by backlash that spills into regulatory conversations. For Roger Goodell, that creates what some insiders describe as a two-front war. On one side, public cultural division. On the other, private ownership anxiety. He can't publicly criticize the halftime act. That would signal weakness and fracture trust with artists and sponsors. But he also can't ignore owner concerns if they believe brand perception is drifting away from core fans. And this isn't the first time Goodell has walked that tightrope. The NFL weathered anthem protests. It navigated political commentary controversies. It endured calls for boycotts from multiple sides of the aisle. Historically, the league tends to outlast outrage. But here's what's different this time. There's an alternative broadcast happening at the same time. That's new territory. Owners don't fear tweets, they fear options. Because once viewers realize they have somewhere else to go during halftime, that habit can stick. If even a fraction of viewers flip channels or open YouTube instead, advertisers notice. And if advertisers notice, revenue conversations change. That's why the internal discomfort isn't about ideology, it's about audience fragmentation. The Super Bowl halftime show has always been a unified moment. Even critics still watched. Even skeptics still tuned in. But if this becomes the first year where a measurable chunk of viewers consciously chooses another production, that's precedent. And precedent makes executives nervous. But while Goodell was balancing internal pressure, the rival production made its most strategic move yet. Because announcing a show is one thing, securing distribution is another. And that's where this story stops being symbolic and starts looking competitive. The distribution bombshell. Here's the part that made NFL executives sit up straighter. This wasn't just a live stream on someone's phone. This wasn't a fringe stream buried on an obscure website. The All-American halftime show locked in real distribution. YouTube, Rumble, X. That alone guarantees visibility. But then came the bigger move, Sinclair Broadcast Group's Charge network agreeing to carry the event on cable television. That changes everything. Because now, this isn't just an online protest. It's a competing broadcast with legitimate reach. Charge Network is available through major platforms like YouTube TV, Hulu Live, and Sling. That means viewers don't need to search for it. They can simply switch. And timing matters. The rival show is scheduled for 8 p.m. Eastern, directly opposite the NFL halftime performance. This is not accidental scheduling. This is direct overlap. It's essentially asking viewers one question: do you stay or do you flip? Historically, halftime has been untouchable. Even people who don't care about football tune in just for that segment. It's been a cultural centerpiece, from pop icons to rock reunions. But this is the first time there's a coordinated attempt to fracture that moment in real time. And the technology makes it easier than ever. In previous decades, if you wanted to watch something else during halftime, you had to physically change channels and hope there was something worthwhile on. Now, open a second screen, tap an app, one click. Fragmentation is effortless, and that's what makes this rival production dangerous. Not necessarily because it will dominate ratings, but because it introduces choice at scale. Choice disrupts monopoly moments. If even a few million viewers migrate, even temporarily, it creates headlines. And headlines shape narratives. And narratives affect future negotiations. And let's be honest, the organizers know that. They don't need to beat the NFL in total numbers. They just need to make enough noise to claim momentum. Even pulling a measurable percentage of halftime viewers would allow them to frame the event as proof of cultural dissatisfaction. And perception, once again, becomes currency. Meanwhile, Sinclair's involvement sends a different signal, that parts of traditional broadcast media are willing to platform alternative cultural programming tied to political identity. That alone makes this feel bigger than entertainment. Because when broadcast networks participate, the story crosses from internet drama into institutional legitimacy. And that's something the NFL cannot ignore. But just as the distribution news spread, another layer entered the story. One that guaranteed national amplification. Because when a former president publicly weighs in on your halftime performer, the temperature rises instantly. And that's exactly what happened next, when politics enters the stadium. At this point, the story was already volatile. But when a former president stepped into the conversation, it moved from entertainment drama to national headline. Donald Trump publicly criticized the NFL's selection, reportedly calling it ridiculous, and stating that he didn't even know who Bad Bunny was. Now, whether that comment was dismissive humor or pointed criticism depends on who you ask. But what matters is this: it amplified the narrative instantly. Because when a political figure of that magnitude comments on a halftime show, the conversation stops being about music. It becomes symbolic. Trump has a long history with the NFL, especially dating back to the anthem protests era. He understands how cultural flashpoints within sports can mobilize supporters. So his reaction wasn't just commentary, it acted as a signal flare. Suddenly, the All-American halftime show wasn't just a rival production. It became, in the eyes of many supporters, a rally point. That's powerful. Because political identity tends to drive stronger loyalty than entertainment preference. People don't just like political alignment, they defend it. And that changes viewing behavior. If supporters perceive the rival show as standing for something, even loosely, they're more likely to actively tune in, share it, and promote it. The halftime choice becomes tribal. And tribal decisions aren't passive. They're intentional. Now, to be clear, there is no official evidence that the NFL's selection was designed as political messaging. The league books performers based on global appeal, streaming numbers, demographic targeting, and cultural relevance. Bad Bunny is one of the most streamed artists in the world. That's data, not ideology. But perception rarely waits for nuance. If a portion of the audience believes the NFL is leaning into a specific cultural direction, that belief alone can drive reaction, regardless of original intent. And once reaction is politicized, everything escalates. Media outlets begin framing it as culture war. Commentators pick sides. Social feeds split. Even people who don't care about football start arguing about halftime. That's when a simple entertainment booking transforms into a symbolic battleground. And here's the thing the NFL understands better than most organizations. Sports are supposed to unify. The Super Bowl, especially, is one of the last mass-shared experiences in American culture. People who disagree on everything else still gather around that broadcast. But when halftime becomes divisive instead of communal, that's a shift. And if the rival show manages to attract millions, even temporarily, it could signal something larger. Not necessarily a permanent fracture, but a warning. Because here's the deeper question most executives are quietly asking. Is this loud backlash representative of a large silent audience, or just a highly motivated minority? That distinction matters. If the NFL's core fan base still overwhelmingly tunes in without disruption, this fades quickly. But if ratings show noticeable halftime erosion, that becomes data. And data shapes future decisions. February 8th, then, becomes more than a performance date. It becomes a measurement, a live experiment. 2 stages, 2 audiences, 2 interpretations of what America wants from its biggest sporting event. And when the numbers come in, they'll tell a story no press release can spin. But beyond the politics, beyond the distribution deals, beyond the commentary, there's a bigger underlying issue here. One that stretches beyond a single halftime show. And it might explain why this clash feels so intense. Is the NFL misreading its audience? Here's the uncomfortable truth no one wants to say out loud. This isn't really about Bad Bunny, and it's not really about Kid Rock. It's about identity. For decades, the NFL positioned itself as culturally neutral territory. Sunday football wasn't red or blue. It wasn't urban or rural. It was just football, a shared ritual. Tailgates, commercials, halftime spectacle. One giant American pause button. But over the past 10 years, that neutrality has been tested. The anthem protests, political commentary from players, public disputes between league leadership and politicians, shifting marketing strategies toward younger and more global audiences. None of those moves happened in isolation. The NFL, like every major corporation, studies demographic trends obsessively. Younger audiences are more diverse, more global, more digitally native. That's not opinion, that's data. And booking artists like Bad Bunny fits that data. He's one of the most streamed artists in the world. His reach isn't regional, it's international. Latin music dominates global charts. Streaming numbers justify the decision on paper. From a purely business perspective, it makes sense. But here's where tension creeps in. The NFL's legacy fan base, especially older, traditionally American, rural, and suburban viewers, may not see themselves reflected in that shift. That doesn't automatically mean they're leaving, but it does mean some feel displaced. And when people feel displaced, they look for alternatives. That's what makes this rival halftime show symbolic. It's not just offering different music, it's offering reassurance. It's saying, you still belong here. That emotional messaging can be powerful, but the critical question is scale. Is this backlash massive or just loud? Social media amplifies intensity. A small but highly motivated group can appear enormous online. Hashtags trend, clips go viral. But actual ratings numbers tell a colder, more objective story. The NFL has survived waves of outrage before. Remember the calls to boycott during the anthem protests? Predictions of permanent collapse? The league ultimately stabilized. Ratings fluctuated, then rebounded. Corporate memory matters. Executives may be concerned, but they're also cautious about overreacting to online firestorms. Because sometimes noise doesn't equal numbers. Still, this feels different in one specific way. The presence of a coordinated, simultaneous alternative broadcast introduces measurable competition during halftime. Even if the rival show pulls only a fraction of viewers, that fraction can be quantified. And once something is quantified, it becomes part of strategic planning. If, hypothetically, a few million viewers flip away for even 10 minutes, that becomes a headline. Rival halftime show pulls X million viewers. Even if the NFL still dominates overall, perception shifts. And perception influences negotiations with advertisers, sponsors, and media partners. But here's the irony. Controversy often increases viewership. Some viewers who claim they'll boycott may tune in out of curiosity. Others may watch both, flipping between broadcasts. Conflict creates interest. Interest creates clicks. Clicks create revenue. In some scenarios, both productions benefit from the drama, which raises an even more fascinating possibility. What if this culture clash ends up boosting total engagement rather than splitting it? What if the NFL halftime show draws strong numbers precisely because of the controversy? And what if the rival production claims victory even with modest ratings because it proves demand exists? In that case, both sides declare success. But there's still a risk, because if the Super Bowl, one of the last unified American events, begins to fracture along cultural lines, it signals something deeper than entertainment preference. It signals segmentation. And segmentation, once normalized, rarely reverses easily. February 8th won't just reveal which show wins the ratings hour. It may reveal whether the NFL's identity is evolving faster than its traditional audience is comfortable with. And once that genie is out of the bottle, there's no easy way to put it back. February 8th, a live experiment no one can control. This is where theory ends. February 8th isn't just a halftime show anymore. It's a stress test. 2 stages, 2 narratives, 1 shared clock. On the main broadcast, the NFL rolls out its global strategy. Bad Bunny alongside Green Day, massive production value, international appeal, and a halftime formula that has delivered record viewership year after year. On the other side, the All-American halftime show leans into patriotism, country rock energy, and cultural defiance. Kid Rock, Brantley Gilbert, Lee Brice, Gabby Barrett, framed not as entertainment competition, but as an alternative vision. The split is intentional, and the ratings will be measurable. Here's what each possible outcome means. If the NFL halftime show dominates without noticeable erosion, league leadership breathes easier. The controversy becomes a headline footnote. Executives point to numbers and say, "See? The audience didn't move." In that case, future halftime bookings likely continue trending toward global superstars with international reach. The data would justify it. But if the rival show pulls a measurable chunk, even temporarily, that changes the internal conversation. Not because it threatens overall Super Bowl supremacy, that's unlikely, but because it proves something has shifted. Even a few million viewers flipping screens becomes proof of audience segmentation, and segmentation leads to strategy changes. Sponsors ask questions, advertisers review breakdowns, owners revisit risk assessments. The NFL has always balanced mainstream appeal with mass unification. But if halftime becomes politically interpreted rather than universally celebratory, booking decisions become more delicate. And here's the scenario no one can predict. What if both broadcasts win in different ways? The NFL draws massive numbers, controversy boosts curiosity, and social media engagement explodes. Meanwhile, the rival show claims success by demonstrating that millions wanted an alternative. 2 victory narratives, 2 press cycles, 2 interpretations of the same night. That's modern media fragmentation. But beyond ratings, there's another metric at play: precedent. This is the first time a coordinated, ideologically framed halftime counter-programming event is airing directly against the Super Bowl halftime show. If it gains traction, others may replicate the strategy in future years. Entertainment counter-programming isn't new, but culturally framed counter-programming at this scale during the Super Bowl, that's new territory. And once something works once, it rarely disappears. But there's also the possibility that after all the noise, most viewers don't switch at all. Because halftime, historically, is habit. People stay seated. They watch the spectacle. They comment on costumes, choreography, and guest appearances. And controversy fades. If that happens, the rival show becomes a footnote in media history, a loud moment that didn't translate into measurable impact. But the only way to know is when the numbers come in. Because on February 8th, nobody controls the remote except the viewer. And that's what makes this so unpredictable. The NFL can project confidence. The rival organizers can project momentum. Commentators can spin narratives in advance. But the audience will decide quietly, one click at a time. And when the ratings are released, they'll tell a story neither side can fully script. This was never just about a halftime performance. It became a mirror, a reflection of cultural shifts, audience identity, and the evolving business of American sports. On one stage, global dominance. On the other, patriotic defiance. The real question isn't who performs better, it's who shows up. February 8th will reveal whether this controversy was just noise or a signal of something deeper inside the NFL's fan base. So when halftime arrives, which screen will you choose? And what does that choice say about where the league is headed next?
Thank you, my viewer. I hope you keep it here on my channel for more discoveries on all the celebrities' untold journeys. Like, comment, and subscribe on Hajararama channel. Thank you so much.